Have you ever felt a disquieting sense of being subtly steered, not quite against your will, but adjacent to it? A love that feels less like a dance of equals and more like a carefully choreographed performance where you're not entirely sure who wrote the script? We speak of mind control, and immediately, images of clandestine government experiments and hypnotic spirals flood the imagination. But what if the most insidious forms of control don't involve overt manipulation, but rather a silent, almost imperceptible intrusion into the architecture of your own mind, enacted by the very person you've chosen to share your heart with? Consider the slow erosion of your boundaries, the gradual acceptance of behaviors that once felt instinctively wrong, the justifications you whisper to yourself, the rationalizations you construct to maintain the illusion of harmony. Is it love, or a carefully constructed cage built of affection and obligation? We are not talking about outright abuse, the obvious red flags that scream danger. We are delving into the gray areas, the subtle shifts in power dynamics that occur within the sacred space of intimacy. The moments where your intuition flickers, a warning signal that you quickly dismiss because the alternative, acknowledging the truth, feels too terrifying. Think of the partner who subtly undermines your confidence, not with harsh words, but with carefully crafted jokes that chip away at your self-esteem. Or the one who isolates you from your friends and family, not with explicit demands, but with guilt trips and carefully timed crises that demand your undivided attention. These are not monsters lurking in the shadows, but often wounded souls acting out unconscious patterns, perpetuating cycles of control that they themselves may not even fully comprehend. But here's the unsettling truth. Mind control in love is rarely a one-way street. We are all susceptible, and we often participate in our own subjugation, driven by deep-seated desires for acceptance, validation, and the avoidance of conflict. We bend, we compromise, we silence our inner voice in the hope of preserving the relationship, even when that relationship is slowly suffocating our spirit. So, how does this insidious process unfold? What are the psychological mechanisms at play, the hidden energies that fuel this dance of dominance and submission? And more importantly, how can you reclaim your sovereignty, your mental and emotional autonomy, within the context of a loving partnership? Prepare to journey into the shadowy realms of the human psyche, where the lines between love and control become blurred, and the path to liberation requires a courageous confrontation with your own deepest fears and desires. Are you ready to confront the uncomfortable truths that lie hidden beneath the surface of your most intimate connections? Are you brave enough to question the narratives you've been telling yourself about love, about power, and about the very nature of reality? Now, let's plumb the psychological depths of this phenomenon, venturing into the terrain charted by Carl Jung. Consider the shadow self, that repository of repressed desires, fears, and unacceptable impulses that we diligently keep hidden, even from ourselves. Could it be that mind control in love stems, in part, from a projection of our own shadow onto our partner? We see in them the qualities we disavow in ourselves, and unconsciously attempt to control these perceived flaws, thereby controlling the very parts of ourselves we cannot bear to face. It's a twisted form of self-regulation, an attempt to manage our inner chaos by manipulating the external world. Furthermore, recognize the archetype of the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine principles residing within each of us, respectively. An imbalance in these internal energies can lead to a distorted perception of our partners. A man overly identified with his animus, for instance, might seek a partner who embodies his idealized feminine image, attempting to mold her into a reflection of his inner world, rather than accepting her as a unique individual with her own inherent complexities. Conversely, a woman disconnected from her animus might seek a partner to complete her, surrendering her own agency in the process. Building on this, however, is the concept of psychological projection. We often attribute our own thoughts, feelings, and motivations to others, particularly those closest to us. If we harbor a secret desire for control, we might project this desire onto our partner, perceiving them as manipulative or domineering, even if their behavior is relatively benign. This projection serves as a justification for our own controlling tendencies, allowing us to maintain a sense of righteousness while subtly exerting our will. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, where our expectations shape the reality we experience. Consider the insidious power of gaslighting, a form of emotional manipulation that erodes a person's sense of reality. It's not always a deliberate act of malice, but often a manifestation of the gaslighter's own insecurities and need for control. By denying your perceptions, questioning your sanity, and distorting your memories, they create a climate of uncertainty and dependence, making you increasingly reliant on their version of reality. It's a subtle form of brainwashing that can leave you feeling disoriented, confused, and questioning your own sanity. On the other hand, we must acknowledge the role of unconscious contracts in shaping our relationships. These are unspoken agreements, often rooted in childhood experiences, that dictate how we expect our partners to behave. If, for example, you grew up in a household where your needs were consistently ignored, you might unconsciously seek a partner who replicates this dynamic, reinforcing your belief that you are unworthy of love and attention. This is not to say that you are consciously choosing to be mistreated, but rather that your unconscious mind is drawn to familiar patterns, even if those patterns are ultimately detrimental to your well-being. Consequently, breaking free from these cycles requires a deep dive into your past, a courageous exploration of the wounds that continue to shape your present. Reflecting on this intricate dance of shadows and projections, we begin to perceive a more profound truth about connection itself. It's not merely a merging of souls, a harmonious blend of desires, but also a crucible where our deepest wounds are exposed, our hidden vulnerabilities laid bare. Within the intimate embrace, we are confronted not only with the radiant aspects of our being but also with the murky depths of our unconscious, the unresolved traumas that continue to shape our perceptions and behaviors. This realization, while perhaps unsettling, is ultimately liberating. For it is only by acknowledging the darkness within that we can truly step into the light of authentic connection. As we navigate these labyrinthine pathways of the heart, it becomes increasingly clear that the pursuit of control is, at its core, a desperate attempt to manage our own internal chaos. The need to dominate, to manipulate, to orchestrate the actions of another stems from a profound sense of insecurity, a fear of losing control over our own lives. But true power, the kind that radiates from within, is not about exerting influence over others. It's about cultivating inner resilience, about embracing our own imperfections, and about surrendering to the flow of life with grace and courage. Consider, if you will, the image of a tangled vine, desperately clinging to a sturdy oak for support. The vine may believe that it is thriving, drawing strength from the oak, but in reality, it is slowly suffocating its host, hindering its growth and vitality. Similarly, in relationships where control is a dominant dynamic, both partners are ultimately diminished. The controller becomes trapped in a cycle of anxiety and manipulation, while the controlled loses their sense of self, their autonomy, and their capacity for genuine joy. Drawing these threads together, we see that the path to liberation lies not in seeking to change our partners, but in transforming ourselves. It's about excavating the hidden traumas that fuel our controlling tendencies, about confronting our own shadow selves with compassion and honesty, and about cultivating a deep sense of self-worth that is not contingent upon the approval or validation of others. This is not an easy journey, but it is a necessary one if we aspire to create relationships that are based on mutual respect, trust, and unconditional love. In light of these insights, the concept of mind control and love transcends the realm of overt manipulation and enters the territory of subtle energetic exchanges. It's about the unspoken agreements, the unconscious contracts, the subtle shifts in power dynamics that shape our interactions. It's about the ways in which we allow our fears and insecurities to dictate our behavior, and the ways in which we unconsciously perpetuate cycles of control that have been passed down through generations. By understanding these dynamics, we can begin to break free from the chains of the past and create a future where love is not a battlefield, but a sanctuary. As we pivot towards the final reflection, let us consider the alchemical potential of relationships. Like the crucible in which base metals are transformed into gold, our intimate connections can serve as catalysts for profound personal growth. By embracing the challenges, confronting our fears, and cultivating compassion for ourselves and our partners, we can transmute the lead of our wounded past into the gold of authentic love and connection. This requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to embrace the unknown, but the rewards are immeasurable. The journey into the labyrinth of mind control within love reveals a fundamental truth. The most potent chains are those forged not of iron, but of unspoken fears and unmet needs. We have explored the subtle erosions of self, the projections and shadows that dance between hearts, the unconscious contracts that bind us to familiar, yet ultimately destructive, patterns. But beyond the intricacies of psychological mechanisms and mystical energies lies a simpler, more profound understanding. It's about recognizing that the desire to control another is, at its root, a desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable, the chaotic, unpredictable nature of life itself. Consider the artist who meticulously plans every stroke, every shade, every nuance of their creation, only to find that the finished masterpiece bears little resemblance to their initial vision. The canvas, the colors, the very air in the room conspire to create something new, something unexpected, something beyond the artist's control. And yet, it is in surrendering to this process, in embracing the imperfections and the unforeseen possibilities, that true artistry emerges. So, 2. In love. The attempt to micromanage another's thoughts, feelings, and actions is an exercise in futility, a denial of the inherent freedom and sovereignty of the human spirit. Perhaps the most insidious aspect of mind control in love is the way it distorts our perception of reality. We become so fixated on manipulating the external world to conform to our desires that we lose sight of the inner landscape, the realm of emotions, beliefs, and values that truly shapes our experience. We sacrifice authenticity for control, intimacy for security, and ultimately, our own happiness for the illusion of power. But the truth is, true power lies not in dominating others, but in mastering ourselves. As we stand at the threshold of this newfound awareness, let us remember that the path to liberation is not a solitary one. It requires courage, vulnerability, and a willingness to seek support from others. It means surrounding ourselves with people who challenge us, who hold us accountable, and who remind us of our inherent worth. It means creating a community of authenticity, where we can share our struggles, celebrate our triumphs, and learn from one another's experiences. And finally, let us embrace the power of forgiveness, not only for others, but also for ourselves. We are all flawed beings, navigating a complex and often confusing world. We have all made mistakes, said hurtful things, and acted in ways that we later regret. But holding on to these regrets only perpetuates the cycle of pain and suffering. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the prison of the past, allowing us to move forward with grace, compassion, and a renewed sense of hope. The reflections shared here are not intended to be a definitive guide, but rather a starting point for a deeper exploration of the dynamics of love and power. The true practice begins now, in the quiet moments of self-reflection, in the courageous acts of vulnerability, and in the unwavering commitment to creating relationships that are based on mutual respect, trust, and unconditional love. The echo of unspoken truths lingers. Subscribe, and the shadows will whisper more secrets to you.